In episode 4, the previous one, there was a deliberate mistake. I said white-eyed honeyeater. That bird doesn't exist. It's a white-eared honeyeater. If you were listening closely, as all good bird watchers should, you would have won big prizes. Anyway, please enjoy episode 5. I did.
Mr. Abbott, this is your 10-minute call. Mr. Abbott, your 10-minute call.
I've been in the entertainment industry 30 years, and this is my first ever ecological convention. My topic? Bird watching. Imagine me, Steve, large brown cow eyes, dark circles under the eyes, like 2 bitumised bike tracks, large sharp nose, so sharp it can cut meat. Best known for droll monologues about failure, talking about bird watching. Bird watching is opening doors for me, that's for sure. But despite all the fresh air filling the musty compartments that make up my 98-kilo squat vessel, I'm a fake. I'm fake. I'm merely mimicking a birdwatcher. All I've got are other people's facts, like red wattlebirds are also known as gill birds, and magpies live on average 10 years, and even some of these facts are debatable. Ladies and gentlemen, Walter Bowles.
In Australia, our little birds just go on and on and on and on. There are certainly records of scrub wrens being retrapped off and on over 19 years, never having moved further than 100 meters. Bowerbirds, I would say, readily would probably go to 20, if not more. Albatrosses would certainly go over 50.
I've only been birdwatching 3 times. Subconsciously, I'm a superb lyrebird. They're quite destructive, aren't they, lyrebirds, the way they forage around, scratch the surface?
I believe years ago they had one in the walk-through rainforest aviary at Taronga Zoo, and it slowly dismantled that one, and they had to move the bird and completely redo the exhibition.
I'm pretending to be a bird watcher just to make money. There may be less species of birds these days, but there are certainly more unpaid bills than ever before. With lyrebirds, I mean, they've got a fairly banal call, like a superb lyrebird, but they add other sounds and bird calls to their list. Is it a linear list? They just keep adding to their act?
They seem to add birds and other sounds locally, but they're able just to recombine these in any sequence they wish, together with some of their own lyrebird-specific calls.
There are currently 866 species in Australia and its territories. 14 of those are extinct. I wish my bills were extinct. Why do birds mimic other birds?
One theory is that it's a signal to potential mates of the number of other birds that occur in your territory, which is a surrogate for the quality of that territory. So if you have lots of other birds that live there, it's because the territory is good value. And because you own it, then obviously she wants to come and mate with you because you're the alpha male.
So it's just like having a shiny car or something, the male's showing off. I live near the surf, and close to the beach is all metered parking. So when it's hot, everybody looks for parks in the back streets to avoid the meters. One day I was busting to a blute, and I just couldn't find a park. I drove around and around for 30 minutes until I was absolutely at breaking point. So, in a sweat, I pulled up in a no parking zone outside my flat and ran upstairs to do the biz. I was gone no longer than 4 minutes, just long enough to get a $177 parking fine. Of course, when you are lost in life, you forget to pay bills, so with the penalty, that number 2 has now cost me $220. I read somewhere that the magpie has perfect oral recall and may in fact be a better mimic than the lyrebird. Is this rubbish?
Certainly some of the work that's been done on magpies suggests that they are very good vocalists of all sorts because they have this huge range of phrases. They can create their own phrases, but they can also do mimicry, and in some cases it's claimed even mimicry of the human voice, but it tends to be done in such a way on the volume and speed that it's very hard to pick unless you record it and play it back, and then you realize they're just chattering away like crazy. Gisela Kaplan, who worked on this, actually never heard it And it wasn't until one of her assistants, was doing it and heard the mimicry. And apparently the reason was young birds do not mimic in the presence of their superior adults. So they'd only do it when she was away and not when she was there.
Mr. Abbott, this is your 7.5 minute call. Mr. Abbott, your 7.5 minute call.
Waiting to perform is like having a hangover before you drink. At least I've added to my bird list. Or shall I say, my list of new friends. I'm more credible than before I was asked to do this talk. I now have the rock warbler. And I ticked a yellow-tailed black cockatoo while walking the dog this morning. 10 of them sitting in pine trees. Count them. If you were listening closely, you would have noticed there are only 9 birds. Listening is important when it comes to bird watching. Their call has stayed with me like a disturbing rumour. I was walking the dog, but instead of watching the dog, I wanted to meet new birds. I think I really have an interest. Maybe I'm not a fake. Maybe I am becoming genuinely interested in birds. Or is it simply because I know more than other people and I want to show off? When I saw a black-faced cuckoo shrike this morning, grey bird, jet black face, like a coal miner before they shower, I was barely able to contain myself. I demonstrated the cuckoo shrike's eccentric wing-folding routine to another dog walker. I went on and on and on. Did you know that the black-faced cuckoo shrikes spend time in the country and the city too? Crested pigeons, rainbow lorikeets, sulphur-crested double-barred finches all have gone urban in the last 40 years, but cuckoo shrikes have kept a claw in both worlds.
So lyrebirds aren't the only birds that mimic. I mean, like magpies, butcher birds mimic. Are there others?
Many Australian songbirds mimic, and our numbers of birds that do that seem to be very high. Some just do it in little moments of stress. Say you've caught it in a net and you handle it, and you're banding it to release it. They suddenly will reel off a whole range of mimicry.
Mr. Abbott, this is your 5-minute call. Mr. Abbott, your 5-minute call.
I can't do this. Everyone here knows more about fauna than me. At the pre-dinner drinks, this chap casually comes up to me and says, while working at Taronga Zoo, showing tourists a barking owl, someone brought a barn owl into the same room, and when the barking owl saw the barn owl, it suddenly swooped down and ripped out the barn owl's heart. All I said was, I once saw a wandering albatross and thought it was an oversized seagull.
How's the wandering albatross doing these days?
The wanderers are in trouble. They tend to be very subject to getting caught in longline fishing. They also have a very slow reproductive rate, so they only breed every other year, so there's a very slow replacement. Yes, albatrosses of all types are in a bit of trouble.
I really need more bird anecdotes, like
The apostle birds always hung around in groups of 12, like the 12 apostles.
So I don't know where that came from. Now, you can get less than 12 and you can get more than 12, yes.
Well, the first people who saw them must have seen them in groups of 12, I guess.
12, yeah, and maybe they couldn't count. Past 12.
Fruit doves.
Usually you only know they're here when they smack into a window and kill themselves. But they do have some wonderful calls, and the best one being the wampoo fruit dove.
It's got a guttural sort of sound.
Wampoo. Wampoo. So that's where the name comes from.
I need more quirky details, like
That's got to be a magpie, isn't it?
No,
Currawong.
no. Noisy.
Frybird.
Correct.
Or, originally called, leatherhead.
Mr. Abbott, this is your beginner's call. Mr. Abbott, your beginner's call.
30 years in the business, and my mouth still goes dry before I go on. I sound like Skippy trying to open French doors in a house fire. My first appearance on a stage, I played a kangaroo. I had to hop on stage, crouch down beside a cellophane fire, get shot and be dragged off by white settlers. Performers have this warped need that is only satisfied by strangers sitting in a dark room and clapping. The same dull applause injured football players receive when they are carried off the field.
Well, we have a range of bowerbirds which build what we call avenues, which are these 2 parallel walls of sticks on the ground. Satin bowerbirds, the main one that people know. Regent does that. and the spotted and great bowerbirds, some of the duller grayish-brown ones do that.
There's a western too, isn't there?
Westerns in that group as well. Then you have a few in New Guinea, which actually clear an area and build amazing structures that look like small houses with open sides and roofs, and they decorate the yard and the whole bit.
What is the purpose of the bow? Is it for sexual encounters?
Mainly to lure females in. So it's the boudoir.
I was 14 when I took my first steps towards the spotlight. I was studying the 39 Steps by John Buchan and thinking to myself, I'm so sick of being shy and invisible. So I developed these funny noises to attract attention to myself and make myself appear more interesting.
Do bowerbirds try and show off to people? Do they build their bowers in public places and they like the attention of everything?
It's mainly for females, but certainly I've seen a hand-reared satin bowerbird which was fixated on people, and particularly any woman who came by wearing something blue, he would come to the front of the cage and display madly at her.
Sounds like a lot of actors I know.
My most successful noises were the pterodactyl call. The pterodactyl is perfect when it's done at inappropriate times, like when I was being introduced to the Governor-General's wife in front of the school. But my most popular noise was the hathier. The hathier is great for distracting people while you try to think of something funny to say. I still use it in my Sandman act.
Birds that display, would you say when they put so much emotion and so much energy into these sort of physical displays they do, does that make them more vulnerable to predators?
It can. And this is, again, some of the trade-off where you're showing off to the female and saying, I am a very fit male. I'm strong enough, I can afford to be extravagant in the way I display, in my colors, and I can take that chance because I'm strong enough, I will survive. In some cases, he's also telling the potential predators, he says, I am strong. You might catch me, but it's not worth your attempt to try. Go get someone weaker.
I wonder if people ever start relationships while they're birdwatching. I wonder, is there any birdwatching groupies?
Are birds gay?
There are certainly some instances in which you get same-sex pairings. This is one of the sort of private little jokes among some birdwatchers when the film March of the Penguins came out, and this was being put forward as, such a wonderful example of good family living. One of the zoos, San Diego somewhere, had a gay pair that would stay together even though they tried to introduce females on occasion.
I had 66 birds on my list before this gig. Now I have more. 67, the superb lyrebird. 68 through to 75 are the bowerbirds.
There's quite a few bowerbirds, aren't they?
There's only two down here in the Sydney area, and the Regent's a very difficult one to see. There's only a couple of places you see them, but the satin's very common. Yeah.
There's a western, isn't there? There's a spotted.
Western, yeah. Spotted, great, Regent up in the Cairns area.
The pallid cuckoo is 76. I'm claiming the barking and barn owls. 79 are the yellow-tailed black cockatoos I actually saw. They're still with me, sitting on my shoulders, like expectation itself. I may as well claim the grey butcherbird as my 80. I did mention it.
Stand by, Mr. Abbott. Dim house lights.
Oh, mighty duplicitous, Greek god of performing and real estate. Please let me get away with this. Let me fool them one more time.
Steve Abbott is an enduring part of the Australian comedy landscape. While performing regularly over the past 10 years as the Sandman or Sandy, Steve's also found time to become an accomplished live performer, a radio presenter, writer, an actor, and even more recently turning his hand to bingo calling. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Abbott.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those people who don't know me, I'm Steve Abbott, the artist formerly known as Sandman. Some time ago, I was working at Taronga Zoo showing tourists a barking owl when someone brought this barn owl into the room. Many birds distract their predators through song. Legsy had 11 pints tonight, and a Galliano that he said delight. And he stood on the table and we cheered him on and on. Then we went went to get a pizza to eat. He stole a cigarette machine for a treat, and we hid in the bushes for hours and hours and hours. Poor Legsy, Legsy's drunk again. Then he ate the cake that Linda just bought. He gulped it down in handfuls, then he streaked, he thought he ought. He ran across the road screaming out, I want sex. So we took him back to our place and we tried to make him laugh. He got a bit aggro, so we put him in the bath, and that's where he stayed all night long. Poor Legsy, Legsy's drunk again. Don't you worry about Legsy, he's exactly what he wants to be, a living legend. I love it when a performance is over and the tension in your shoulders just leaves and you're free. It's like taking 5 Nurofen. To be continued.